Just once your red light comes on, introduce yourself, and you've got 2 minutes as well.
Thank you for recognizing me, Chairman Farmer. My name is Dr. Alexandra Muñoz. I am a molecular toxicologist, and I specialize in understanding how different toxins cause cancer at the cellular level. I am opposed to HB 809. First, I want to make clear that the labels on many pesticides do not reflect the published peer-reviewed scientific data. Glyphosate is a carcinogen that causes cancer, and there is substantial evidence to support that, not just one study. There are many studies, and I have sent you a report detailing these mechanisms. Bayer Monsanto has consistently manipulated the system and knowingly submitted data to the EPA that doesn't reflect the actual health harms of their products. But what I want to talk about right now is the absolute worst scenario that this bill can bring about. Let's say in 2028, a company releases a new product. Under FIFRA, the company will submit its own safety data to the EPA. And because the company knows that the product is harmful, it has intentionally structured its studies in a way that show that their new chemical is totally safe. So now the label has no warnings of any types of harms, and the EPA approves it. Then, because the chemical is so safe, it is used as in playgrounds to control bugs at children's schools. In 2065, we find out that all the girls at the schools where this chemical was sprayed are now married and can't have children. The chemical exposure has left them infertile. They want to file a class action lawsuit against the company, but because of HB 809, even with the current amendment, there is no action that they can take, even though the company knowingly deceived them. This is the nightmare scenario that this bill can bring about. Companies will feel confident putting this product on the market, knowing that they can get away with this harm. And if this company happens to be controlled by a foreign adversary, then it means that by allowing this bill, you would be sanctioning an act of bioterrorism against the girls in the state of Tennessee. I ask you to vote no on this dangerous piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing on that one.
I always have to question, my big question always, and I'll pose this to all of you or anybody who wants to chime in. When you have a multi-billion-dollar company that wants immunity, why would a multi-billion-dollar company want immunity?
Well, I'm a toxicologist, and I think that from a toxicological perspective, it's very clear why they would want immunity. Pesticides and herbicides are often very toxic in their impacts, and they tend to have toxic impacts in 3 types of categories. They often produce cancer, they can be neurotoxins, and they can be endocrine disrupting chemicals. And endocrine disrupting chemicals alter the hormonal balance of males and females, and when these exposures occur at a young age, they can alter the sexual development in ways that affect children for the rest of their lives. It can lead to things like infertility, it can lead to loss of pregnancies, and there's substantial evidence, or there's emerging evidence, let's say, that glyphosate-based herbicides are endocrine-disrupting chemicals that do impact fertility and that are changing the sexual development of girls because it is an androgenic chemical. And so that is the risk of these chemicals, and they are aware of the class of chemicals that they're working with, and it's a very wise decision to ask for this type of immunity, but it's a very dangerous decision for the people of Tennessee.
Mr. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. Representative Salinas, ma'am, you recognize.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for the toxicologist. Can you describe some of the experiments that you have seen and their safety for oncogenesis with glyphosate?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for asking that question. So glyphosate-based herbicides are carcinogenic, and I know that there's been some dispute about whether or not that's true, but there is substantial data showing that this is the case. There have been a number of epidemiologic studies showing that people who have been exposed to glyphosate exhibit increased risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer. And there's also been a number of animal studies showing that when animals are exposed, they develop many types of cancers. Now, at the cellular level, there's a certain set of mechanisms that glyphosate engages that make it clear that it is a carcinogen. So the first thing that glyphosate-based herbicides do is that they enter cells, and that's already a dangerous process for something to enter a cell. It means that it can impact what's inside of the cell. And inside of the cell, glyphosate-based herbicides produce oxidative stress, which is a type of chemical reaction that generates all kinds of really reactive molecules. And these reactive molecules damage lots of things that are in their space. One of the things that they can damage is the DNA. And when the DNA gets damaged, that's a genotoxin, and that is the very seed of cancer. And what these chemicals do is they cause something called double-strand DNA breaks. And so DNA double-strand breaks separate the helix of the DNA into fragments. And this has been measured in people that have been exposed. They've found DNA double-strand breaks. They've done it repeated in lab studies. There's substantial evidence showing that this happens. Once those DNA strand breaks occur, then the chromosome fragment gets encapsulated into something called a micronucleus. And that micronucleus is kind of like a small basketball, but it's outside of the main nucleus of the cell. And the DNA inside of a micronucleus becomes catastrophically damaged. It undergoes a process called chromothripsis, which mutates the DNA heavily, and then it's released into the cell. And that becomes reincorporated into the genome. So it actually creates a highly corrupted set of DNA that goes into the cell and continues to lead to the events that produce cancer. So there's substantial evidence here, and it also engages a pathway called NF-kappa B, which is directly linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and the development of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So there's a very clear link at the molecular level that this is what's going on.
Very
Thank
good,
you.
Representative Salinas. Any follow-up, ma'am?
Yeah, so to be clear, so, you know, the biology of our cells, we have our cell membrane, and then we have a lot of other organelles in the middle, or nucleus in the middle, which is double, so it's really hard to get in there. So these compounds are getting to the nucleus and the DNA even after getting into our bodies. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah. And so I think that's one of the things that's most dangerous about it, thank you for pointing that out, is that the chemicals go into the cells and then they get into the nucleus where they can damage the DNA. And that's why formulations like Roundup and other formulations that include things like surfactants that help the chemicals penetrate into plant cells better, those same types of features are going to help them penetrate into the nucleus better. And that means that when they're getting inside, they can actually damage the DNA. And that's not something that all toxins can do. So looking at this in terms of a formulation, because that is the exposure route, is the way to think about it. And it is the way in which it's the most dangerous to human health.